Have you ever wanted to bake a beautiful sourdough loaf at home, but the thought of it scares the bejesus out of you? You've got no idea how to start your starter, so you search the internet, find a bazillion things, and none of them make sense. Well, today we are tackling this exact problem. I'm going to show you a 3-step process to making your very own starter, and I promise you it could not be simpler. So let's get into making this sourdough starter. If you're new here and just tuning in for the first time, I'm Del. I've been a professional chef for over 20 years, and now I help home cooks make easy, delicious recipes, waste less in their kitchen, bake budget-friendly dinners, and everything in between. And today we are tackling this sourdough loaf. Now, how many of you out there have gone to the supermarket, looked at the price of a sourdough loaf and thought, Jesus, that is not for me, it is way too expensive? Let me know in the comments, because I always like to hear from you. So today I'm going to show you how in 10 days you can create your very own active starter and bake a loaf of bread. This is day 10, and this is the sourdough loaf that came from that starter that I started 10 days ago. The internet is full of people telling you that you need to have a mature starter. Of course, a mature starter will give you deeper flavor. It doesn't mean that you can't rise a loaf of bread from a young starter. What you may have seen when you watch other videos, and if you've ever tried to make one at home, that your starter isn't maybe lining up with what's being shown to you, or something else is happening. This is why we've got this 3-step process, so that you can go along at the rate of which your starter is moving on to that next step, which makes it easy to do. And this no fail method will mean that you can bake yourself a loaf, because if you do know me, I like to waste less, cook better, and save money, and this is going to be doing all of them, because we won't be throwing away the stuff that we bought that cost you a fortune, and you've learned how to make it yourself, and you're going to have a starter for life so that you can continually make beautiful loaves. So let's get into day 1 of making our sourdough starter. To make a sourdough starter, you're going to need some things. You're going to need a glass jar, a set of digital scales, and some wholemeal flour. Using wholemeal flour is a great way to start a starter. You can do it in the more traditional way, and if you want to find out more things about that, you can find out all about it on my website. And there's also a discount code, so make sure you chuck that in. But let's get back to making this guy. So day 1, it's simple, equal parts flour and water. Then you leave it 24 hours. This is step 1 of our 3-step process. So you don't need to follow it exactly day to day, you just need to watch what's happening in your jar. By day 2 you might see some bubbles, but if you don't panic. It's really nothing to worry about. We're just going to move on with the next part, which is adding in more flour and water. When you're using a wholemeal flour or a rye is great to start this off with. It's already packed full of all them microbes because it's got the wheat germ in there and all them extra bits and pieces which already contain some of that wild yeast to really get this thing going. I'm just using the bog standard run-of-the-mill wholemeal flour. Nothing's fancy, nothing special. It's just, as I said, full of all that good stuff, and it means there's going to be that little extra boost to get it going. We're going to go through each one of these steps. The first one is the mixing step. The second one is when you potentially are going to get a false rise. That is step 2. And I'm just leaving mine in my kitchen. Bearing in mind I live in New Zealand, it's also winter. It's not particularly warm, but it really shouldn't matter if you're using whole grain flour where you sit it. So after a few days and your starter starts to rise above that rubber band, things might smell a bit funky, and we always want to make sure that we're getting rid of the starter in the beginning here. But great, because there's not a lot of it, so we are just constantly getting rid of that little bit of starter and keeping the bit that we need. You can see here that things are starting to get bubbly in the bottom as well, so that's just a great sign, a visual cue that things are happening. You know, day 4 is roughly around when people might start to give up because it might smell bad, so it's not going to smell sour at this point, it's going to smell bad. Maybe a little bit funky, but that's exactly where most beginners trip up. We're just going to keep on this process by adding some of the previous day's starter to new flour and water. Once we've had that rise above the rubber band, we can move on to the next step in our starter's journey to life. And so we're going to do the same again. We're going to keep 20 grams of our starter, feed it with 20 grams of water and 20 grams of flour, mix it together, and again we're going to keep repeating this process every 24 hours until we've got bubbles, things are looking active, it's rising above that elastic band, and it's really looking great. It's so exciting when you see your starter do this. I always make sure that when I'm putting my lid on, I'm never doing it up tightly. You just want to sit it on the top because you still need that air to be going in there, because that's also got lots of the wild yeast that we need to help this sourdough starter become active and bubbly. What I talk a lot about in the reliable sourdough method is the original way that you would make it with just plain flour, and for that it needs a lot more stability. There needs to be less variations in the warmth and the cooling, and it can get all a little bit complicated. Not that it's not possible, because look at these photos from students that have already gone through the doors of the reliable sourdough method, and oh my god, aren't they amazing. And this method is included in there, so if you do want to learn, make sure you head on over, scan that QR code so you can find out all about it. When I got to here, I actually left it for 48 hours because I had seen some bubbles, but it didn't look like that much. And you know what? A few days in, if you leave it for a little bit longer, it doesn't matter, because it's going to be drawing in more and more and more of them wonderful natural yeasts from the air. And just so long as it's 48 hours later when you move on to the next step, because by that point you definitely won't have seen anything change, it will still be good to go. And we can move on to that final step when we've well and truly seen the starter rising up and down. And this is where you should start to see bubbles, and it really make its way above that rubber band, which is bloody exciting considering we're not that many days into making this thing. And by day 7 or 8, this is where things are getting bubbly, beautiful, big, and then wonderful yeasts are doing their thing. Anything after day 9 is when you can use your discard, so it truly becomes a zero waste ecosystem. But before that, I probably would always get rid of it, just because we're not fully active and all them wild yeasts are not in there, and the good bacteria aren't 100% doing their thing yet. But after that, you can make crackers, you can make savory pancakes, cinnamon rolls. And then step 3 is when your starter has its true rise, is explosive and doubles in size. And now we can move on to that last step, because it's done what we wanted it to do, which is rise above the line. But now what we need to do is make sure that we can get that starter going so that we know how long it takes to rise, so that we can use it when we move forward into making our bread. So here at this point, you want to be watching it for about 12 hours. I kind of started this all at the wrong time of the day, but that doesn't matter. I can still see whether or not it had risen in the jar, because it will always leave a little mark of kind of where it got to. But what you want to do here, after you've seen that first time when it has risen above the band, is we are going to keep 50 grams of starter, we're going to give it 50 grams of water, and we're going to give it 50 grams of flour. So as you can see, we've bulked it up, and we are going to repeat this every now 12 hours until it well and truly doubles in size, and you can see it happening within that 12 hours. This is the predictability of what we love with a sourdough starter. And if it's constantly doing this, it means that we can use this starter to bake. And at this point, you've got your starter for life, just so long as you keep it fed whenever you need to use it. If you really want to take a deep dive into making sourdough, as I already said, make sure you check out the reliable sourdough method. It's in the description box down below. You can find all the details there, and it is a great way to learn how to make sourdough and some other amazing things that you can do with sourdough discard to bake at home. And by day 9, we really have made this flour and water into something absolutely incredible. But I need to make sure I have enough starter to make my loaf, and I need 200 grams of starter. To this 25 grams, I'm going to add 100 grams of flour, 100 grams of water. And now you can see here, when I'm making this starter for my loaf, I've moved on to regular plain white flour. High grade or a bread flour is perfect. And then 12 hours later, you'll see that your sourdough starter has risen, is bubbly, beautiful, and ready to go. And then when I make my bread, I scrape it all out, and you can see here in the bottom of the jar there's only a tiny bit left, which is roughly 25 grams. So this piece that I kept, my 25 grams, that is going to be my living starter forever, and I'm going to use that now. That's our leftover starter that we will continually keep in the fridge until we need it. Also, what's a good idea is to give your sourdough starter a name. That way you don't end up forgetting about it. There's some absolute crackers out there. How about something like Bread Pit? What would you call yours? Let me know in the comments section down below. So now it's time to cut into this beautiful sourdough loaf. Oh, it smells incredible. The texture is insane. Would you not be happy with that? Considering this was made from a starter that was only 9 days old. Incredible. I mean, just look at that crumb. That is incredible for a starter that was only 9 days old. So if you've ever thought that sourdough is too difficult to master, well, I guarantee this fail-safe method will not let you down. Oh, it just smells amazing. So I think there's probably only one thing left to do, and that's give it a little taste. Which obviously means lashings of butter, but my God, I can't wait to eat it. If you feel like you've learned something during this episode, make sure you give me a like, give me a subscribe, so you never miss out on things coming out of the Dishes with Del kitchen, because every week there's something different, whether it's a budget meal, something delicious you can make for dinner, or a way to use pantry staples to make delicious sauces, spice rubs, and everything else you could possibly imagine. Let me know in the comment section down below, are you going to give this fail-safe method a try? And if you have and it's worked for you, make sure you let me know too. But oh my God, this bit of bread is looking at me and I can't wait to get into it. So, oh my God, honestly, there is nothing better, A, than bread and butter, but B, bread and butter on sourdough that you made yourself. Oh my God, next level delicious. But that's it for this week, so make sure you tune back in next week where there'll be something else equally great. But why don't you start making your sourdough starter now, and by next week you can almost be eating your first loaf too. I'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Love you lots. See you later.